Hello, everybody. I am Tyler D. Wolf. This is the Wolf's World podcast station. And today's Wiki Read is going to be RFK. I'm not sure where else that is going to spawn from. You will see it in the description. Uh, Find me over on my social medias, Tyler D. Wolf for Instagram, Tyler D. Wolf 23 slash BB for Snapchat. There is my other YouTube and Twitter is Breakfast Buddy. I have a second YouTube for gaming called Breakfast Buddy that I am currently in the process of figuring out what I am going to do with that. Today's wiki read is RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, the man himself. I definitely know how RFK has that 2 pack a day voice. Should have did something with a raccoon penis too, but no, it may pop up here, so let's get to it. Alright, RFK, Robert Kennedy, and Bobby Kennedy, redacted here for other uses. See RFK disambiguation and Robert Kennedy disambiguation. Not to be confused with his son, the current Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., which is the person I am currently looking for. Alright, so RFK Jr., also known by his initials, RFK Jr., is an American politician, environmental lawyer, author, conspiracy theorist, and anti-vaccine activist, serving as the 26th United States Secretary of Health and Human Services since 2025. A member of the prominent Kennedy family, he is a son of Senator and U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, RFK. I got assassinated. Definitely a future episode there. And a nephew of U.S. President John F. Kennedy and U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy. The Kennedy family. Kennedy began his career as an assistant district attorney in Manhattan, NYC. In the mid 1980s, he joined two nonprofits focused on environmental protection, Riverkeeper and Natural Resource Defense Council, the NRDC. In 1986, he became an adjunct professor of environmental law at Pace University School of Law. And in 1987, he founded Pace's Environmental Litigation Clinic. In 1999, Kennedy founded the nonprofit environmental group Waterkeeper Alliance. He first ran as a member of the Democratic Party and later started an independent campaign. Got a little tongue-tied there, people. In the 2024 presidential election, before withdrawing from the race and endorsing the Republican Party's nominee, Donald J. Trump. Or just Donald Trump on here. It's beautiful. Since 2005, Kennedy has promoted vaccine misinformation, the whole COVID-19 crisis, and public health conspiracy theories, including the chemtrail conspiracy theory, HIV/AIDS denialism, and the scientifically disproved claim of a causal link between vaccines and autism. He has drawn criticism for feeling vaccine hesitancy amid a social climate that gave rise to the deadly measles outbreak in Samoa and Tonga. Terrible incidents. Kennedy is the founder and former chairman of Children's Health Defense, an anti-vaccine advocacy group and proponent of COVID-19 vaccine misinformation. He has written books including The River Keepers in 1997, Crimes Against Nature 2004, The Real Anthony Fauci 2021, and A Letter to Liberals in 2022. Kennedy was narrowly confirmed as HHS Secretary in 2025 amid strong opposition from scientists and medical groups. His tenure has been marked by controversial actions on vaccines, public health policy, and agency leadership that have drawn significant legal, scientific, and political criticism. His early life and education. Okay. RFK Jr. was born at Georgetown University Hospital in Washington, D.C. on January 17th, 1954. He is the third of 11 children of U.S. Senator and U.S. Attorney General RFK and Ethel Skake. Skake. Is that an I or an L? Ethel Skake? He is a nephew of President JFK and Senator Ted Kennedy. Kennedy was raised at the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, and at Hickory Hill, the family estate in McLean, Virginia. In June 1972, he graduated from the Pelfrey Street School, a day school in Watertown, Massachusetts. While attending Pelfrey, he lived with a surrogate family at a farmhouse in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Kennedy continued his education at Harvard, graduated in 1976 with a Bachelor of Arts in American History and Literature. With his former roommate, Peter W. Kaplan, he did thesis research in Alabama. He earned a Juris Doctor degree with the University of Virginia School of Law in 1982 and a Master of Laws from Pace University in 1987. He was 9 years old when JFK was assassinated in 1963, and 14 when his father was assassinated while running for president in 1968. Kennedy learned of his father's shooting while at Georgetown Preparatory School. A few hours later, he flew to Los Angeles on Vice President Hubert Humphreys' plane along with his older siblings, Kathleen and Joseph. He was with his father when he died. Kennedy was a pallbearer at his father's funeral when he spoke and read excerpts from his father's speeches at the Mass commemorating his death at Arlington National Cemetery. After his father's death, Kennedy struggled with drug abuse, which led to his arrest in Barnstable, Massachusetts for cannabis possession at 16, and his expulsion from 2 boarding schools, Millbrook and Pomfret. During this time, some in the Kennedy family regarded him as the ringleader of a pack of spoiled rich kids who called themselves the Hyannisport Terrors, engaging in vandalism, theft, and drug use. His first cousin, Caroline Kennedy, later blamed Kennedy for leading other members of their family down the path of drug addiction, calling him a predator. At Hartford, Kennedy continued to use heroin and cocaine, often with his brother David, earning a reputation that is described as a Pied Piper and drug dealer. Oh, it's that Kennedy hustle in them, just like on how they get their start in like those bootleg renegades. He's like, oh, gotta make money that way. And I'm telling ya, we were wild back then. In 1972, Kennedy and Roger Ailes made a film about wildlife and conservation in Kenya. Kennedy's book on Frank Minus Johnson, a federal judge who led racial desegregation in Alabama, was published in 1978. His legal career at Manhattan DA's office in 1982, Kennedy was sworn in as an assistant district attorney for Manhattan. After failing the New York bar exam, he resigned in July 1983. Wait a minute. This dude was sworn in as an assistant district attorney and then failed the bar exam. Isn't that supposed to be the other way around? You pass the bar exam and then you get the position. Seems like shit's working a little backwards there. All right, so it was crazy. Conviction for heroin possession. On September 16th, 1983, Kennedy was charged with heroin possession in Rapid City, South Dakota in February 1984. He pleaded guilty to a single felony charge of possession of heroin and was sentenced to 2 years of probation and community service. After his arrest, he entered a drug treatment center to satisfy conditions of his probation. Kennedy worked as a volunteer for the National Resource Defense Council, the NRDC, and was required to attend regular drug rehabilitation sessions. Kennedy asserted that this ended his 14 years of heroin use, which he said had begun when he was 15. His probation ended a year earlier. Okay, so let's Yep, since he was 15, 14 years of heroin use, so 29. So by the time he was 30, his probation ended. Damn. Oh, sorry about that. I'm not sure exactly how loud that whistle hit in there. And here we go. Right, Riverkeeper. In 1984, Kennedy began volunteering at the Hudson River Fishermen's Association, renamed Riverkeeper in 1986. After a patrol boat, it had been built with settlement money from legal victories preceding Kennedy's arrival, and after he was admitted to New York Bar in 1985, Riverkeeper hired him as senior attorney. Kennedy litigated and supervised environmental enforcement lawsuits on the East Coast estuaries on behalf of Hudson Riverkeeper and the Long Island Soundkeeper, where he was also a board member. Long Island Soundkeeper and sued several municipalities and cities along the Connecticut and New York coastlines. On the Hudson, Kennedy sued municipalities and industries, including General Electric, to stop discharging pollution and clean up legacy contamination. His work at Riverkeeper set long-term environmental legal standards. In 1995, Kennedy advocated for repeal of legislation that he considered unfriendly to the environment. In 1997, he worked with John Cronin to write The Riverkeepers, a history of the early riverkeepers and a primer for the waterkeeper movement. That is a lot of waterkeeper, riverkeeper shit. That sounds a bit like, opening up those floodgates, gatekeeping, like a little bit of connection now. I don't believe there's any. But who knows? Just don't look at this. Alright, in 2000, a majority of Riverkeeper's board sided with Kennedy when he insisted on rehiring William Wagner, a wildlife lecturer and falcon trainer whom the organization's founder and president, Robert H. Boyle, had fired 6 months earlier after learning that Wagner had been convicted in 1995 for tax fraud, perjury, and conspiracy to violate wildlife protection laws. Yeah, that's a bit hard. Wagner had recruited and led a team of at least 10 who smuggled cockatoo eggs, including species considered endangered by Australia, from Australia to the U.S. over a period of 8 years. He served 3.5 of a 5-year sentence and was hired by Kennedy a few months after his release. After the board's decision, Boyle, 8 of 22 members of the board and Riverkeeper's treasurer, resigned, saying it was not right for an environmental organization to hire someone convicted of environmental crimes and that it would hurt the organization's fundraising. Yeah, I mean, it definitely at that time, the guy served 3.5 out of a 5 year sentence. For those of you that don't know, that is a federal crime, especially with tax fraud and conspiracy. And for him to get a 5 year sentence and then get that knocked down, like, dude straight up, like, got some information, dropped it to the right person, and that got in front of a judge, and he got X amount of months like written off for his help in solving another crime. So I mean, the dude's on a governmental board for wildlife protections after he was in jail and got this. Like, dude definitely turned over some information to somebody that was like, God, wow, this is so good. Like, we've got a position over here for you. Like, we know you did this, but you also, you did turn over that. Like, uh, all right. I mean, at least at the time, people would definitely look at it. I mean, I hate to say it, but eventually the stuff like that's going to be forgotten until like someone like me just happens to read through, bring it up, and if the video hits, people are like, "Did you know he did that?" Like, I had to hire him. He was the best option. I believed in his conviction. He turned over someone else to get a reduced sentence. He got those months knocked off. Oh, right. Well, working on Riverkeeper spearheaded a 34-year battle to close the Indian Point nuclear power plant. Kennedy was featured in a 2004 documentary about the plant, Indian Point, Imagining the Unimaginable, directed by his sister, the documentary filmmaker Rory Kennedy. In 2017, Kennedy argued that the electric Indian Point provided could be fully replaced with renewable energy in 2022 after the plant's closure. Carbon emissions from electricity generation in New York State increased by 37% compared to 2019 before the start of the closure. So it got worse. Emissions from electricity generation. Carbon emissions from electricity generation increased. Yeah. Kennedy resigned from Riverkeeper in 2017. All right. Pace Environmental Litigation Clinic. In 1987, Kennedy toured the Environmental Litigation Clinic at Pace University School of Law, where for 3 decades he was the clinic's supervising attorney and co-director and clinical professor of law. Kennedy obtained a special order from the New York State Court of Appeals that permitted his 10 clinic students to practice law and try cases against Hudson River polluters in state and federal court under the supervision of Kennedy and his co-director, Professor Carl Copeland. The clinic's full-time clients are Riverkeeper and Long Island Soundkeeper. Dude's got a whole cavalcade of lawyers. I mean, he did go to law school and is going through all this, so it's not surprising he could, whip other lawyers into a frenzy. Like, he's gonna go do something. He's like, make some phone calls. The clinic has sued governments and companies for polluting Long Island Sound and the Hudson River. Yeah, that can only take like so much fire. It just turns like toxic, and no one wants to have. I forget which river it is in India, which is supposed to be the most polluted in the world, or at least top 10. I know there is. I believe it's outside of like Somalia where a whole bunch of people have like dumped their clothes and it's just like polluting the lake, river, ocean. something along those lines, where it's just a clothing disaster. They just dump them there. I believe that's China's dumping ground. I could be wrong, or it's just the world's dumping ground in general. I hate to be mean, but so many other countries have beaten the shit out of them, and they're just like, you know what, we're just gonna fucking do this. Fuck you. At the end of the day, like, it seems to be the epitome of a country just, I'm gonna do what I have to do. Alright, the clinic issued companies in the Hudson River and its tributaries. It argued cases to expand citizen access to the shoreline and won hundreds of settlements for Hudson Riverkeeper. Kennedy and his students also sued dozens of municipal wastewater treatment plants to force compliance with the Clean Water Act. Oh, that sucks that they have to force compliance for a Clean Water Act. Like, just being in violation of that just makes you sound like a piece of shit at the end of the day. Like, there's no two ways around it. Use as shitty as the water you put out. In 2010, a Pace lawsuit forced ExxonMobil to clean up tens of millions of gallons of oil from legacy refinery spills in Newton Creek in Brooklyn. Huh. Alright. On April 11, 2001, Men's Journal gave Kennedy its Heroes Award for creating the Pace Environmental Litigation Clinic. Kennedy and the clinic received other awards for successful legal work cleaning up the environment. The Pace Clinic became a model for similar environmental law clinics throughout the country. In June 1999, as Riverkeeper's success on the Hudson began inspiring the creation of waterkeepers across North America, Kennedy and a few dozen riverkeepers gathered in Southampton, Long Island to found the River Waterkeeper Alliance, which is now the umbrella group for 344 licensed waterkeeper programs in 44 countries. As President Kennedy oversaw its legal membership, policy, and fundraising programs, the alliance is dedicated to promoting swimmable, fishable, drinkable waterways worldwide. Under Kennedy's leadership, Waterkeeper launched its Clean Coal is a Deadly Lie campaign in 2001. Yeah, I don't think there's really a clean way to burn coal unless it's somehow trapped in a box that is just like sealed, I guess. I mean, there's some kind of perpetual energy thing. Campaign in 2001 bringing dozens of lawsuits targeting mining practices, including mountaintop removal and slurry pond construction, as well as coal burning utilities, mercury emissions, and coal ash piles. Kennedy's Waterkeeper Alliance also has been fighting coal export, including from terminals in the Pacific Northwest. Waterkeeper waged a legal and public relations battle against pollution from factory farms in the 1990s. Kennedy rallied opposition to factory farms among small independent farmers, convened a series of national summits on factory meat products, and conducted press conference whistle-stop tours across North Carolina, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Ohio, and Washington, D.C. beginning in 2000. Kennedy sued factory farms in North Carolina, Oklahoma, Maryland, and Iowa. In a 2003 article, he argued factory farms produce lower quality, less healthy food, and harm independent family farmers by poisoning their air, water, reducing their property value, and using extensive state and federal subsidies to impose unfair competition against them. There's a whole documentary on a bunch of that chicken farming out there on how shit can get really dirty, really fucked up, really quick. Kennedy and his environmental work have been the focus of several films, including Waterkeepers 2000, directed by Les Guthman. In 2008, he appeared in the IMAX documentary film Grand Canyon Adventure River at Risk, riding the Grand Canyon in a wooden dory with his daughter Kik and anthropologist Wade Davis, Kennedy resigned the Waterkeeper Alliance presidency in November 2020. New York City Watershed Agreement. Beginning in 1991, Kennedy represented environmentalists and New York City watershed consumers in a series of lawsuits against New York City and upstate watershed polluters, authorized a series of articles and reports alleging the New York State was advocating its responsibility to protect the water repository and supply in 1996. He helped orchestrate the $1.2 billion New York Watershed Agreement, which New York Magazine recognized in its cover story, The Kennedy Who Matters. Talk about a title. It's The Kennedy Who Matters. I am the Kennedy Who Matters. This agreement, which Kennedy negotiated on behalf of environmentalists and New York City watershed consumers, is regarded as an international model in stakeholder consensus negotiations and sustainable development. Kennedy and Madonna, LLP. Ooh, here we go. In 2000, Kennedy and environmental lawyer Kevin Madonna founded the environmental law firm Kennedy and Madonna, LLP, to represent private plaintiffs against polluters. The firm litigates environmental contamination cases on behalf of individuals, nonprofit organizations, school districts, public water suppliers, Indian tribes, municipalities, and states. In 2001, Kennedy and Madonna organized a team of prestigious plaintiff law firms to challenge pollution from industrial pork and poultry production. In 2004, the firm was part of a legal team that secured $70 million settlement for property owners in Pensacola, Florida, whose properties were contaminated by chemicals from an adjacent Superfund site. Kennedy and Madonna was profiled in the 2010 HBO documentary Man vs. Ford, which chronicles 4 years of litigation by the firm on behalf of Rappaport Mountain Indians against the Ford Motor Company for dumping toxic waste on tribal lands in northern New Jersey. In addition to a monetary settlement for the tribe, the lawsuit contributed to the community's land being relisted on the federal Superfund list, first time that a delisted site was relisted. In 2007, Kennedy was one of 3 finalists nominated by Public Justice as Trial Lawyer of the Year for his role in the $396 million jury verdict against DuPont for contamination from its zinc plant in Spelter, West Virginia. In 2017, the firm was part of the trial team that secured a $607 million settlement on behalf of over 3,000 residents from Ohio and West Virginia whose drinking water was contaminated by the toxic chemical prophylosonic acid, which DuPont released into the environment in Parkersburg, West Virginia. Alright, Morgan & Morgan. In 2016, Kennedy became counsel to the Morgan & Morgan law firm. Ooh. Feeling it today, people. The partnership arose from the 2 firms' successful collaboration on the case against SoCal Gas Company following the Aliso Canyon gas leak in California in 2017. Kennedy and his partners sued Monsanto in a federal court in San Francisco on behalf of plaintiffs seeking to recover damages from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma Knew I could get it out. Cases that the plaintiffs allege were a result of exposure to Monsanto's glyphosate based herbicide Roundup. Kennedy and his team also filed a class action lawsuit against Monsanto for failing to warn consumers about the dangers allegedly posed by exposure to Roundup. In 2018, Kennedy and his partners filed a class action lawsuit against Columbia Gas of Massachusetts alleging negligence following gas explosions in three towns north of Boston of Columbia Gas, Kennedy said as they build new miles of pipe. The same company is ignoring its existing infrastructure, which we now know is eroding and is dilapidated. Shots there. All right, Cape Wind. In 2005, Kennedy clashed with national environmentalist groups over his opposition to the Cape Wind Project, a proposed offshore wind farm in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, in Nantucket Sound. Taking the side of Cape Cod's commercial fishing industry, Kennedy argued that the project was a coastal boondoggle. This position angered some environmentalists, and Kennedy was criticized by Rush Limbaugh and John Stossel. In the Wall Street Journal, Kennedy wrote, Vermont wants to take its nuclear plant offline and replace it with clean, green power from Hydro-Quebec Power, available to Massachusetts utilities at a cost of 6 cents per kilowatt an hour. Cape Wind electricity, by a conservative estimate and based on figures they filed with the state, comes in at 25 cents per kilowatt. Other ventures. In 1999, Kennedy, Chris Bartle, and John Hoving created a bottled water company, Keeper Springs, which donated all of its profits to the Waterkeeper Alliance, which he clearly has a stake in. What a shock. Oh, could you be any more obvious? Okay. I feel like some business people just like, yeah, I got a stake in this company, but I'm just moving the funds over to it. There's more people involved. So did as everyone else involved. Alright, Kennedy was a venture partner and senior advisor at Vantage Point Capital Partners, one of the world's largest clean tech venture capital firms. Among other activities, Vantage Point was the original and largest pre IPO institutional investor in Tesla Incorporated, or Tesla Inc. Vantage Point also backed BrightSource Energy and Solazyme, amongst others. Kennedy is a board member and counselor to several of Vantage Point's portfolio companies in the water and energy space, including Astra, a Vancouver-based company that markets the technology to remove phosphorus and other expensive nutrients from wastewater, transforming otherwise pollution directly into high-grade fertilizer. He is also a senior advisor to Starwood Energy Group and has played a key role in a number of the firm's investments. He is on the board of Vianix, a Massachusetts-based multi-scale vanadium flow battery systems manufacturer. On October 5th, 2017, Vianix, National Grid, and the U.S. Department of Energy completed the installation of advanced flow batteries at Holy Name High School in the city of Worcester, Massachusetts. The collaboration also included Siemens and the United Technologies Research Center and constitutes one of the largest energy storage facilities in Massachusetts. Kennedy served on the board of New York League of Conservation Voters. Kennedy is a partner in Colorven, which offers a turkey cotton fiber pre-treatment solution that reduces water sewage and toxic discharges in the cotton dyeing process. Kennedy was a co-owner and director of Smart Grid Company Utility Integration Solutions, El Sol, which was acquired by Alstom, and he is presently a co-owner and director of GridBright, the marketing leading grid management specialist. Leading grid marketing specialist. Okay. In October 2011, Kennedy co-founded EcoWatch, an environmental news site. He resigned from its board of directors in 2018. Minority and poor communities. In his first case as an environmental attorney, Kennedy represented the NAACP in a lawsuit against a proposal to build a garbage transfer station in a minority neighborhood in Ossing, New York. In 1987, he successfully sued Westchester County to reopen the Croton Point Park, which was primarily used by poor and minority communities from the Bronx. He then forced the reopening of Pelham Bay Park, which New York City had closed to the public and converted to a police firing range. International and indigenous rights. Starting in 1985, Kennedy helped develop the International Program for Environmental Energy and Human Rights for National Resource Defense Council, traveling to Canada and Latin America to assist indigenous tribes in protecting their homelands and opposing large-scale energy and extractive projects in remote wilderness areas. In 1990, Kennedy assisted indigenous Peconius in Chile in a particularly successful campaign to stop the construction of a series of dams on Chile's iconic Bilbao River. The campaign derailed all but one of the proposed dams. Beginning in 1992, he assisted the Cree Indians of northern Quebec in their campaign against Hydro-Quebec to halt construction of some 600 proposed dams on 11 rivers in James Bay. In 1993, Kennedy and NRDC, working with the indigenous rights organization Cultural Survival, clashed with other American environmental groups in a dispute about the rights of Indians to govern their own lands in the Orient region of Ecuador. Kennedy represented the Confederation, a confederation of indigenous peoples, in negotiation with the American oil company Conoco to limit oil development in Ecuadorian Amazon and at the same time obtain benefits from resource extraction for Amazon tribes. Kennedy was a vocal critic of Texaco for its previous recording of polluting the Ecuadorian Amazon. From 1993 to 1999, Kennedy worked with 5 Vancouver Island First Nations in their campaign to end industrial logging by Macmillan Baldell in Cloquet Sound, British Columbia. In 1996, he met with Cuban President Fidel Castro to persuade him to halt his plans to construct a nuclear power plant in Uruguay. During the meeting, Castro reminisced about Kennedy's father and uncle, speculating that U.S. relations with Cuba would have been far better had President Kennedy not been assassinated. Definitely. In 1996 and 2000, Kennedy and the NRDC helped Mexican commercial fishermen halt Mitsubishi's proposal to build a salt facility in the Lagoon San Ignacio, an area in Baja where gray whales bred and nursed their calves. Kennedy wrote in opposition to the project and took the campaign to Japan, meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Kazuo Obuchi. In 2000, he assisted local environmental activists to stop Chafin Light, a real estate developer and U.S. engineering giant Bechtel, from building a large hotel and resort development that Kennedy argued threatened coral reefs and public beaches used by local Bahamians at Clifton Bay, New Providence Island. Kennedy was one of the early editors of Indian Country Today, North America's largest Native American newspaper. He helped lead the opposition to the damming of Fatufui River in the southern zone of Chile in 2016 due to the pressure precipitated by the Fatulu River Keepers campaign against the dams. The Spanish power company Endesa, which owned the right to dam the river, reversed this decision and relinquished all claims for the Fatulufu. All right, military and Wiki Vix. Okay. Kennedy has been a critic of environmental damage by the U.S. military. In a 2001 article, Kennedy described how he sued the U.S. Navy on behalf of fishermen and residents of Viquez, an island of Puerto Rico, to stop weapons testing, bombing, and other military exercises. Mm. Kenny argued that the activities were unnecessary and that the Navy had illegally destroyed several endangered species, polluted the island's waters, harmed the residents' health, and damaged its economy. He was arrested for trespassing at Camp Garcia Viquez, the U.S. Navy training facility, where he and others were protesting the use of a section of the island for training. Kennedy served 30 days in a maximum security prison in Puerto Rico. The trespassing incident forced the suspension of live firearm exercises for almost 3 hours. The lawsuits and protests by Kennedy and hundreds of Puerto Ricans who were also in prison eventually forced the termination of naval bombing in request by the Bush administration. In a 2003 article for the Chicago Tribune, Kennedy called the U.S. federal government America's biggest polluter and the U.S. Department of Defense the worst offender. Citing the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, he wrote, "Unexploded ordnance waste can be found on 16,000 military ranges, and more than half may contain biological or chemical weapons." Political aspirations. Here we go. Candidacy aspirations. Kennedy considered running for political office in 2000 when Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a U.S. Senator from New York, did not seek re-election to a seat formerly held by Kennedy's father. In 2005, Kennedy considered running for New York Attorney General in the 2006 election, which would have put him up against his then brother-in-law, Andrew Cuomo, but he ultimately chose not to, despite being considered the frontrunner. On December 2nd, 2008, Kennedy said he did not want New York Governor David Paterson to nominate him to the U.S. Senate seat to be vacated by Hillary Clinton, Obama's nominee for Secretary of State. Some outlets indicated that Kennedy was a possible candidate for the position. He said that Senate service would leave him too little time with his family. 2000's consideration. Okay, hold up. Alright, he said that Senate service would leave him too little time with his family. Yeah, because if you're a part of the Senate, you have to live in Washington D.C. for to do any kind of thing, since you're pretty much going to be stuck there, and you gotta have a house there. And now and again, you can close down the government and just go home and see your family. All right, I got something here. What is going on? Oh boy. Uh, all right, so 2000's consideration for top environmentalist jobs. As well as respected climate lawyer in the 2000s, Kennedy was often linked to top environmental jobs in Democratic administrations, including the 2000, 2004, and 2008 presidential elections. He was considered as a potential chair of the White House Council on Environmental Quality for Al Gore in 2000 and considered for the role of EPA administrator under John Kerry in 2004 and Barack Obama in 2008. According to Pelicito, the the Obama transition team decided not to nominate Kennedy due to his past heroin conviction and opposition from Senate Republicans. The United States Chamber of Commerce lobbyist William Kovacs said that Kennedy's nomination would speak volumes as to where Obama is going with his appointments. A Kennedy appointment is as liberal as you can possibly get. There is no candidate based firmer and extremes. Republican Senator Jim Inhofe, Inhofe, of Oklahoma also criticized the proposal, saying Kennedy was too radical and would further a left wing agenda if appointed. Now it seems to be a right wing agenda, left wing agenda. I mean, each side is going to take their shots like, oh, they're too far left, oh, they're too far right, they're not middle enough. I mean, people do be going wild and they can swing to either side, but also, it's those kind of people that are also, you know, they they don't have a middle ground. They're just gonna push their narratives at the end of the day, especially when you have the right amount of funding to push your narrative, essentially. Right, 2024 presidential campaign. In a speech in New Hampshire on March 3rd, 2023, Kennedy said he was considering a run for president in 2024. I am thinking about it. I've passed the biggest hurdle, which is that my wife has green-lighted it. Kennedy filed his candidacy for the Democratic presidential nomination on April 5th, 2023. He formally declared his candidacy at a campaign launch event at the Park Plaza Hotel in Boston on April 19th. On October 9th, he became an independent candidate in the election. He is the fifth member of his family to seek the presidency, listing many false conspiracy theories that Kennedy used during campaign appearances. Politico Fact named his president's campaign its 2023 Lie of the Year. In May 2024, Kennedy was considered for the Libertarian Party nomination for president, but lost to Chase Oliver in Colorado. The state Libertarian Party selected Kennedy, but Oliver appeared on the ballot as the Libertarian nominee. Kennedy's campaign was noted for receiving significant support from Republican donors and Donald Trump allies who believed he would serve as a spoiler, taking the votes of those who would have otherwise voted for a Democratic nominee. In August 2023, it was revealed that Timothy Mellon, who gave $50 million to Donald Trump's super PAC MAGA Inc., also donated $5 million to Kennedy's super PAC, making him Kennedy's largest single donor. Mellon donated another $5 million to Kennedy's super PAC in April and another $50 million to MAGA Inc. in May. In July 2024, Forbes reported that Mellon had donated $25 million to Kennedy and Kennedy-affiliated groups. I guess he kind of really can campaign, or at least, get the right person. All right. In August, facing declining poll numbers, limited campaign funds, and increasing challenges to ballot access, the Kennedy campaign began appealing to the Harris and Trump campaigns, seeking a cabinet post in exchange for endorsement. Harris reportedly rebuffed Kennedy, but Trump said he probably would consider the offer if something like that would happen. On October 22nd, the Kennedy campaign filed to be removed from the Arizona ballot amid reports he would drop out to endorse Trump. On On August 23rd, Kennedy dropped out and endorsed Trump, saying he intended to maintain ballot placement in certain non swing states. He was a reversal for Kennedy, who had previously said he would under no circumstances join Trump on a presidential ticket, that his and Trump's position could not be further apart, and that Trump was a terrible human being, a discredit to democracy, and probably a sociopath. In his speech endorsing Trump, Kennedy described speaking with Trump and his advisors and said he discovered that he and Trump were aligned on many key issues. In December, Kennedy featured in a documentary film, Inactive America's Silent Killers, about the growing global epidemic of physical inactivity and its impact on health, particularly in North America. Days before the 2024 United States presidential election, Donald Trump said that Kennedy would have a big role in healthcare. According to Washington Post, Kennedy's position was not originally meant to be one requiring Senate confirmation. On October 14th, after winning the election, Trump announced his intention to nominate Kennedy for Secretary of Health and Human Services. During the week of December 16, 2024, Kennedy began meeting with senators in advance of his confirmation hearings in January 2025. The Senate Committee on Finance and Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee held hearing on Kennedy's nomination. Senator Bernie Sanders, the committee's ranking member, was critical of Kennedy during the hearing in December 2024. More than 75 Nobel laureates urged the U.S. Senate to oppose Kennedy's nomination, saying he would put the public's health in jeopardy. As of January 9, 2025, over 17,000 doctors who are members of Committee to Protect Healthcare had signed an open letter urging the Senate to oppose Kennedy's nomination, urging that Kennedy had spent decades undermining the public confidence in vaccine and spreading false claims and conspiracy theories, that he was a danger to national health care, and that he was unqualified to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. So him just essentially speaking out, you're too contradictory for us. As of January 24, 2025, more than 80 organizations had voiced opposition to Kennedy's nomination. Kennedy disclosed to an HHS ethics official his arrangement with the law firm Wisner Bond, which specializes in pharmaceutical drug injury cases, which under Kennedy earns 10% of the fees awarded in contingency cases. He refers to the firm. If confirmed as HHS director, Kennedy would retain the arrangement only in cases that do not directly affect the federal government. He listed his income from the Wisner Bond for his arrangements at $856,559. Before assuming the position of director of HHS, he will have from the law firm complete his final payments cases in the U.S. government, and that he will sign his son's marker litigation against the marker policy, a vaccine given to prevent cervical cancer in human. Alright, guys, I gotta answer this message here real quick. So, oh, okay, guys, you get to see fucking real-time action. uh, she so much fun when shit just does not go your way. Because, well, I had dropped my phone and had broke it. Little side tangent here. Okay, I fucking dropped my phone, broke it. Was stupid. Tried holding a little too much in my hands. Not paying attention. Just went to go move. Fucking slipped out. Just somehow, just fell like face first. Just perfect. Just bah. I was like, oh, that was a nasty shot. Especially since it's at least being dropped from like a relative like 5 foot height. So just, oh man. But yeah, phone out of commission. So I have not been able to receive, you know, text messages, which I guess as some people, I do just really only straight use text instead of like Snap, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, stuff like that. Oh man, it. Uh, Now other people trying to get a hold of me, not being able to message back, just figuring stuff out on the fly. Uh, it's I have. Okay. Alright, so these extra 3 months. Right, on February 4th, 2025, the Committee on Finance voted 14 to 13 to forward Kennedy's nomination to a full Senate vote, deciding the vote was from Bill Cassidy, who was originally hesitant, but he said he received serious commitments from the Trump administration and honest counsel from Vice President J.D. Vance in exchange for his support of Kennedy's nomination. According to Senate Help Committee, HELP committee site, Cassidy, a doctor who practiced for 30 years before becoming a politician, told the committee that he had a patient with acute hepatitis B who needed a liver transplant and had to be transplanted by Medivac. He called the transplant an invasive $250,000 surgery in 2000 that even if successful, he would leave his young woman with a lifetime of $50,000 per year medical bills. Adding, as I saw her take off, I was so depressed, a $50 a vaccine could have prevented all this. Of the two committees that Kennedy spoke, only the Senate Finance was to vote on his nomination. How does the Senate Finance vote on his nomination? I mean, I can understand like some committees coming in, but the Senate Finance one is that essentially justifying his pay? Like, if we're gonna be paying him, oh, we all need to get the okay, okay? Okay, bruh. Bleh, bleh. Alright, so on February 13th, 2025, the Senate confirmed Kennedy as Secretary of Health and Human Services by a vote of 52 to 48, with former Senate Republican Conference leader Mitch McConnell, his sole Republican, to vote against him. A polio survivor. His former. Vote the efforts revoke approval of the polio vaccine. He said anyone seeking the Senate's consent to serve in the incoming administration would do well to steer clear of even the appearance of association with such efforts. All Democrats also voted against Kennedy on March 16, 2026. Massachusetts District Judge Brian Murphy offered the reversal of all decisions made by the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices by Kennedy-appointed penalists. Murphy found that the government had disregarded the scientific method and thereby undermined the integrity of its actions. His ruling was in response to a lawsuit brought by 6 medical organizations that contended Kennedy and his appointees had made arbitrary and capricious changes to the childhood vaccine schedule, bypassing the evidence-based practice that he had on pendant tenure. On February 13, 2025, Kennedy was sworn in as the 26th Secretary of Health and Human Services in the Oval Office by Justice Neil Grush. He is the first independent or third-party presidential candidate to become a cabinet member after running for president. Make America Healthy Again executive order. Minutes after Kennedy was sworn in, Trump signed Executive Order 14211, which ordered the creation of Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA Commission, to be chaired by Kennedy. Its objectives include investigating the incidence and cause of chronic childhood diseases and assessing the prevalence of the threat posed by the prescription of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, stimulants, and weight loss drugs. I guess that's why Ozempic is so popular. On February 14, 2025, agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control Prevention, the CDC, and the National Institute of Health, the NIH, were informed that approximately 5,200 newly hired federal health workers were to be fired that day. Well, in April 2025, Kennedy fired most of the staff of the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, shuttering nearly all its departments' programs, including approvals of new workplace safety equipment and research into firefighter health, were abruptly canceled. Yeah, I mean, shutting down the investigation into workspace safety for equipment for firefighters and their health. Yeah, things aren't always going to be pretty. I mean, just ask Pete Davidson that shit. I shoot. Shit like everyone else. On February 20th, 2025, during an unusual severe influenza season, HHS instructed the CDC to suspend its ad campaign prompting flu vaccination. The advertising, in part a response to declining flu vaccination rates, promoted the message that vaccination would result in much milder symptoms and lower chances of becoming severely ill for those with the flu. Alright, 2025 Southwest United States measles outbreaks. Here we go. Kennedy's tenure began during a measles outbreak in the southwest U.S., including the first measles death in a decade. The Texas Department of State Health Services reported 146 cases, 20 hospitalizations, and 1 death in late February. In his first public comments on February 26, Kennedy said there had been 2 deaths and that there have been 4 measles outbreaks this year. In this country last year, there were 16, so it's not unusual we have measles outbreaks every year. Such outbreaks of the disease had been declared domestically eliminated until the measles resurgence in the United States that began in the 2010s. He also falsely claimed that the people hospitalized were done so mainly for quarantine, a claim healthcare professionals refuted. U.S. Senator Ron Wyden wrote, "Nothing about kids dying from measles is normal. Anti-vaxxers like RFK Jr. and the Republicans who enable them are responsible for every single one of their deaths." Days later, Kennedy called the outbreak a top priority for the department. His messaging regarding the outbreak of cited fringe theories blaming poor diet and health. He promoted cod liver oil, steroid inhalation, and antibiotic vitamin A and other questionable treatments that he called almost miraculous, while recommended vaccination against measles. He also overstated the vaccine's potential harms, suggested that immunity from natural infection would be better. The CDC says that the MMR vaccine is much safer than getting measles, mumps, or rubella. The antibiotic is not effective against a viral disease such as measles. Vitamin A is part of measles treatment, primarily in areas where children may be deficient in it. On February 28th, HHS top spokesperson Thomas Corey abruptly resigned 2 weeks after being sworn in as the Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. He reported clash with Kennedy over his management of the department during the measles outbreak. On March 2nd, Kennedy was criticized for writing an op-ed for Fox News that called vaccines a personal choice and recommended vitamins and good nutrients to combat measles. But he also wrote in the piece, vaccines do not protect individual children from measles, but also contribute to community immunity, protecting those who are unable to be vaccinated due to medical reasons. After Kennedy took to the media to falsely claim that the vitamin A is both a prophylactic and treatment for measles, doctors in Texas began to see children infected with measles also having symptoms of vitamin A toxicity, like just fucking bombing their kids. They're like, you don't need a vaccine. What you need is vitamin A. Just fucking, man, vitamin A toxicity? It must be fucking just straight pouring them in their chalky ass drinks. Oh man. Oh, some people are just too fucking stupid. Okay. On March 28th, Kennedy told Peter Marks, the head of the FDA's vaccine program, that he should resign or be fired. Marks wrote a resignation letter that laminated Kennedy's attempts to erode trust in vaccines. It has become clear that truth and transparency are not desired by the secretary, but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies. Days earlier, the CDC head of communications said after his own resignation, Kennedy and his team are working to bend science to their own narratives rather than allowing facts to guide policy. In April, Kennedy praised Texas doctor Ben Edwards as one of the two extraordinary healers using his unverified treatment of measles. The weeks before, Edwards was aware that he was infected with measles when he met children and parents at his clinic without wearing a mask. The Maha Report. On February 22nd, 2025, the Maha Commission released a report about childhood chronic disease. It was described as wide-ranging and claimed that a range of factors, including diet, vaccinations, medical prescriptions, physical stress, food additives, and pesticides, are potential drivers behind the rise in childhood chronic diseases that present the clearest opportunities for progress. On May 29th, Notice first reported that some of the studies of the Maha Commissioner's reports cited did not exist. The authors of several other studies, the report cited their work was mischaracterized. Medical research, Ivan Ornatsky said the errors were characteristic of general AI usage. They have come up with references that share a lot of words and authors and even journals names. They are not real. Some of the report citation URLs contain the string oocyte indicating a tool produced by OpenAI was used. Alright, so just using AI to write articles and put them out. Easy enough, put that shit into a prompt. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said these errors were formatting issues that are being addressed and the report will be updated. But it does not negate the substance of the report, which, as you know, is one of the most transformative health reports that has ever been released by the federal government. And whether the Maha Commission's report used generative AI, Levitt says. I can't speak to that. The report was reportedly updated that day. Notice, NOTUS acronym, released a follow up addressing the updates and reported that several errors from the original report had been edited or removed. New errors were found, including updated citations and misinterpreted scientific studies. CDC leadership departures. When CDC Director Susan Menares was ousted in August 2025, several CDC leaders quit over Kennedy's anti science policies. In a resignation note, National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases Director Dmitry Dutskakis wrote that Kennedy and his appointees threatened the lives of the youngest American and pregnant people. Pregnant people? You mean pregnant women or pregnant females? Wrote that shit in there. In a statement, lawyers for Manares said that Kennedy had been weaponizing public health for political gain and putting millions of Americans' lives at risk. Also among those leaving were Deborah Horry, the chief medical officer and the heads of several other directorates. Horry's farewell announcement referenced vaccine misinformation, the 2025 measles outbreak, and the 2025 shooting attack on the CDC. Days after the departure, 9 former CDC leaders from both Democratic and Republican administrations wrote the New York Times that a shakeup to the agency was unlikely anything our country has ever experienced. Autism Data Science Initiative on October 22nd, 2025. Kennedy approved a $50 million grant to the National Institute of Health for 13 projects to help transform autism research through the proposed Autism Data Science Initiative to help transform autism research. I'm not sure what needs to be transformed about autism research. I feel like that little bit right there is just a little. it's just open ended. CDC revises stance on autism and vaccines. On November 19th, 2025, the CDC website on autism and vaccines was radically changed from its September 2025 version. In an interview, Kennedy reported that he had personally instructed the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to abandon its longstanding position that vaccines do not cause autism, a move that underscores his determination to challenge scientific consensus and bend the Department of Health to his will. FactCheck.org wrote that the change was not evidence-based. The revised site makes several false statements, contradicting long-standing scientific evidence that supports the absence of a causal link between childhood vaccines and autism. According to CDC staff, required scientific vetting for public-facing agency web pages were entirely bypassed in this instance. The Wall Street Journal wrote, "No association has ever been proven between vaccines and autism. Numerous medical associations and professionals immediately issued statements protesting the change, including excerpts from the Center for Infectious Disease Research Policy, CIDARP, Children's Hospital Philadelphia, Stanford University School of Medicine, Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development, and American Academy of Pediatrics, Harvard T.H. Chan School for Public Health, and the Autism Science Foundation." Right, we have hepatitis B vaccines, anti-vaccine advocacy, and conspiracy theories on public health, vaccines and autism claims, writings and speeches promoting anti-vaccine theories, meeting with Donald Trump, controversy with Robert De Niro, Samoa measles outbreak, Tylenol and autism-related health policies, allegations about circumcision, COVID-19 is another topic. He did wrote like the book The Real Fauci. I forget what year that came out, if I'm remembering correctly, 2022. So there's a whole section on that. Medical racism conspiracy theory, HIV, AIDS denialism, chemtrail conspiracy theory, miasm theory, pushback from the Kennedy family, political views, economic inequality, foreign affairs and military intervention, environmental policy. I mean, oh, he's is the head of the water keepers. See, there's a thing about drug use, questioning the validity of elections, political endorsements, animal testing, assassination of JFK and RFK, John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, food allergies, gender dysphoria, murder of Martha Moxley, nicotine, raw milk, tanning beds, testosterone, general interests, marriages and children, health, religion, sexual assault allegations, relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, treatment of dead animals. And we got bibliography is selected works, children books, notes, the references. There's a bunch of those. I mean, he is a Kennedy at the end of the day. So this has been my RFK Jr. Wiki Read research. I may do a part two. We'll throw a part one up here just so that way, I got it clocked. And if I need to, I can always come back to it. And I know right where to pick off. I want to appreciate y'all watching. You want to do one of those like, comment, subscribe shits. Appreciate it. Promote. Fucking don't. I mean, I'm doing this for the love. The love of the game. I mean, at the end of the day, I know I won't be doing that stand-up comedy, have fun, give myself a real ass podcast. Well, I can't call it that. That's already Louis J. Gomez's shit. So appreciate that, dog. Right. Bye.